You can find all the deck lists in the video and more at the link in the description down below. Let's get started. Pioneer might not have any professional events in the foreseeable future, but the format is still alive and well, just at tiers below pro level. Let's take a look back at the Pioneer Challenge results from this past weekend and see what's cooking. Saturday afternoon's 43-player challenge had one specific deck that I really want to talk about, the deck that wound up winning the entire challenge itself. Dimir Ninjas in the hands of Season Herb, or Season Grixis if it's just cutting down the colors to their letters, wound up taking the entire event. Although this list is a little bit different than the one that you've seen in some of the feature match videos at my LGS card art. This deck is more aligned actually with the standard Dimir decks that are currently topping the metagame at the moment, relying on the power of Floodpitch Drowner and Kaito Bane of Nightmares to outpace its opponents. Mutavault is a huge addition to the Pioneer style of this deck, as it's not only a ninja to grow larger with every Kaito emblem that you acquire, but it also allows for Unholy Annex to be fully online thanks to also being a demon, which is a big difference from the standard versions of this deck. Ingenious Prodigy is legal in standard, but doesn't really see play in the Flash Matters style decks as it exists now in the format, but here in Pioneer, it provides a little bit of extra card advantage alongside the Annex, as well as some semi-unblockable threats thanks to Skulk to allow for Kaito to come crashing onto the battlefield in multiple ways. This might be the result that Dimir needs in Pioneer to really break out into the format, and even though it doesn't have the Enduring Curiosity package, there are other cards in Pioneer that with these other synergies from lands like Mutavault are giving the deck card advantage that it needs. Now, Green Devotion also had a top 8 result in this challenge in the hands of pilot Vito Carvalho 01, or hopefully I'm saying that right, but it wound up adding Expedition Map from Foundations into pretty much a stock Devotion list to up the frequency of finding Nykthos and some other lands to really pop off with the deck. A Singleton Keen-Eyed Curator in the sideboard gives the deck a double Devotion pip Scavenging Ooze to play around with as well against decks like Is It Phoenix. Now, the rest of this challenge's top 8 was dominated by Rakdos decks. 3 Prowess decks and 2 Demon lists wound up swarming the results, while a singleton copy of Azorius Spirits, packing a total of 10 auras in the form of Curious Obsession, Sheltered by Ghosts, and Shard Mage's Rescue, took 4th place as the only other non-red-black deck from this challenge. Now, there were 2 challenges that fired on Sunday, and in the morning, it gave us 48 players in the event with plenty of aggressive decks in the top 8, including 3 copies of Rakdos Prowess, freshly Gigantolis, as well as 2 Azorius Humans and yet another Azorius Spirits deck. Humans is the main deck that I really want to touch upon from this challenge, as the inclusion of Mockingbird to give the deck an effective 5 or more copies of just about every human it plays is a massive benefit. But so is the fact that decks are now going back to running some number of Reflector Mage in their 75. Now, Reflector Mage specifically is a house against so many of the mid-range decks in Pioneer, like Rakdos Demons or the Mono Black Demons deck, that not only rely on the sheer size of their creatures to really benefit their deck, but are cutting down on the number of actual demons that they need to keep one around with an Unholy Annex in play in order to really fully benefit from the best Phyrexian arena that potentially has been printed. Bouncing one of these threats with a Reflector Mage not only time walks them early, but prevents any more of the same named creatures from being played next turn, meaning the Demon's deck is going to be taking extra points of damage from their Annex on top of having a limited number of plays available. This also completely erases the Ritual Chamber token that gets made, which is another demon that these lists are creating. Now, I love seeing a card like Reflector Mage included again in the format. Now, the Azorius Spirits list was in the pilot Will Costa's hands in 7th place, and also added a singleton Mockingbird into its package, which, again, I love since there's no Phantasmal image in this format, so this is kind of the best sort of mock of it that you're going to wind up getting. Sheltered by Ghosts and the Wandering Emperor seem to be mainstays in some versions of this deck now, and probably the one that I like the best, foregoing the other Curious Obsession or as Matter list, and instead just having answers instead of card velocity and tempo in order to close out games. Last but not least, a brief shout out and apology to mispronouncing this name, Penascimento on Lotus Field combo, running a singleton copy of Filter Out to bounce all non-land, non-creature permanents back to their owner's hands, mostly enchantments in this case. Now later on Sunday afternoon, we had 52 players sign up for the challenge event and had some of the usual suspects with Rakdos Demons featuring Blade of the Oni taking the first place slot, alongside 2 copies of Selesnya Company in 4th and 5th, and Is It Phoenix in 7th. The fan-favorite archetypes of Selesnya Angels and Niv-to-Light took 3rd and 8th place respectively, with the Angels list sporting 3 copies of Enduring Innocence to synergize with its weaker creatures in the 7 mana elves that this list was running, as well as some of the Angels pre-life gain or Giada being on the field. Now, the 2 main decks from Sunday afternoon that I want to touch upon are Jund Creativity, and no, this isn't modern, it's still Pioneer, as well as a Selesnya Company Orion list that leans a little more into a forgotten, aggressive style of Selesnya deck play. Let's start with the deck that wound up placing a little bit lower, as the 6th place deck Selesnya harkened back to an Elves style deck from older formats, while still benefiting from that 3 mana or less clause that Collected Company creates so much advantage with. Now, in order to do this, pilot Tulio Hondi went with Yorion as their companion and shoved 40 creatures into their 80 card deck, giving them a 90% hit rate on their collected companies with the hypergeometric equation, although a less chance to find said collected companies, so they supplemented it with 2 additional copies of Kayla's Reconstruction. Now, targets like Voice of Resurgence and Toby Beastie Befriender look more like a Tokens Matter or Swarm the Board strategy, while Fierce Empath allows the deck to tutor for the one non-cocoable target in the deck, Decimator of the Provinces. Now, the Craterhoof Behemoth throwback with an Eldrazi twist, this big baddie allows for the deck to go from going wide to going over the top and has a distinct Elves deck and Modern or Legacy flair to it. Of course, the deck still runs cards like Enduring Innocence and Skyclave Apparition from the normal Selesnya list, but it winds up trading in those taxing effects for raw power and a way to close out the game quickly. Now, the 2nd place deck list from pilot CMAC, with an underscore at the end there, the underscore is probably silent, is something that I was surprised not to see more of sooner. Not only is this creativity list going Jund instead of Rakdos or Is It, but it's tutoring up all of the big 3 that you would want to have in a list like this: Atraxa, Titan of Industry, and the big bad Valgavussi itself. Although this list runs creativity instead of Transmogrify, so you can't wind up playing Courier's Briefcase like I originally thought of doing for Jund, Paw Patch Formation provides a hell of a replacement for the Mana Rock that also works as a main deck modal removal spell in certain situations or a pinch against flyers. Splashing Green also gives the deck the ability to play an underused card outside of like the 4 and 5 color money pile lists, Pillage the Bog. Digging 6 or more cards deep early in the game to find creativity while putting away your targets on the bottom of your library Volcanic Spite style. This is a very powerful card that almost works as a pseudo dig through time without having to be blue, and is a big benefit to putting green in your deck outside of the fact you get some sideboard cards and a little bit of extra token generation from Paw Patch Formation. Now, although stretching into 3 colors in Pioneer while also running 2 Fountain Port could lead to some potential mana issues, I do think the Jund version gives the deck way better options, including one of those sideboard cards, Back to Nature. That's what wound up cooking in Pioneer this weekend. So is there anything catching your eye to try out for yourself? Let me know down in the comments below what you're trying to play, and while you're down there, give the video a thumbs up to show that you're still enjoying the Pioneer format no matter where you're playing, online, in paper, or even just mentally constructing deck lists in your head when you should be paying attention to work or something like me. Now, I do want to take a moment to shout out my members for supporting this video and my channel in general. If you want to benefit from the membership perks such as Discord access and personal deck techs, click the join button below the video or on my channel page for ways to show your devotion. As always, you can tap that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest deck techs, metagame analysis, and just in general, Magic content from me. See you at the Pioneer tables.